mentioned the hybrid, the fact that 28 hours out we go off the non-free return. We go on the non-free return trajectory. And the other thing is the considerable change in our flight plan with respect to time. Apologize for the terrible hours that some of you may have to keep. I see everything happens in the middle of the night around here back on Earth. But we do have this 83-hour translunar coast time due to the hybrid and to get the right lighting conditions at the landing site. That's a difference also. Neil landed with about a 10, 11 degree sun angle, and we're going in with a much lower sun angle, about 5.2 degrees, be much deeper in the shadows. But we wind up lifting off with the same sun angle that he had because we're there the extra 10 hours. So our second EVA should give about the same lighting, I guess, as Neil's had, right? And our first one will be a little longer shadows. Do you have anything else you want to say about the hybrid? Go ahead. Shoot.
No, I wanted to be mentioned so that people were cognizant of the fact that even though we get launched on the same type of trajectory that all the rest of the flights have been launched on, that is the free return, to preclude night launches and to control our approach time at the landing site so the lighting will be controlled. We do fire the SPS engine on the second day to take us off of the free return trajectory and put us onto what we call the non-free return or the hybrid trajectory. This is being done to take care of basically those two things, prevent night launches, and it also is a device to allow you to launch at any particular time and control your transit time so that the lighting at any selected landing site will be proper.
I guess some of the numbers are interesting. The free return for that time would give us a 1,850 nautical mile paraloon at the moon, and we burn onto the non-free return so that we have the 60 nautical mile paraloon at the moon. And if we don't burn LOI for some reason, we have to find 1,800 feet per second out of some engine to get us back home. And therefore there are some changes in the lunar orbit insertion rules, and we depend now not only on the SPS engine, but by virtue of the fact that we're off the free return trajectory, we would depend on firing up the LEM and making a burn if the SPS engine failed, and use the LEM descent engine to start us back home on a free return, or put us back on the proper trajectory for return to Earth. You got anything, Al?
No.
Dick?
Okay, we're ready now for questions. If you would please wait for the mic before asking. Jim Slade.
Will you be able to see and photograph the impact of the LEM after it's been jettisoned?
Well, that's an interesting question that Dick and I have talked about. And, Mike followed the LEM down for quite a ways. And Dick, why don't you tell him what you're going to try and do anyhow?
We've thought considerably about this. We don't know whether we'll be able to or not, but we're going to try. And the way we'll do this, the jettison maneuver itself, of course, is leaving the LEM in the inertial attitude for that particular burn. And when we separate with 1 foot per second retrograde maneuver. So at the time of LEM ignition for their deorbit burn, you might call it, we are approximately 3.5 miles in front of it and half a mile or so below it. Now, we'll use the computer programs in the command module and load our target program, P76, with the time and the impulsive maneuver that the LEM will execute. Once that is done, we'll use the sextant or the navigational routine in the command module, sextant tracking, P20 program, to update from the P76, update the LEM state vector, hoping that auto optics in the command module will in fact follow the LEM all the way to the lunar surface. Once I think we're satisfied that auto optics has a good handle on the LEM state vector and is capable of tracking it automatically, then we'll go ahead and put the DAC, or the data acquisition camera, on the sextant and let auto optics do the rest. Now that's about all we can do. And we're hoping that somewhere in there that we'll obtain pictures of impact. And I don't know whether we will or not.
I guess
Some angles are pretty high, and lighting being what it is, I'm not sure.
I guess everybody's aware of the fact that why we're impacting the LEM, trying to impact it within 15 kilometers of the landing site so that they can calibrate the seismometer on the ALSAP package. And that's been one of the more fun things in the discussions recently, was where to target the impact point on the LEM. And I always felt they ought to target it right for where we landed to ensure that it didn't land right on top of the ALSAP package, which I think at impact time, if the signal ceased from the ALSAP, you'll all know where the LEM landed. Hey, I think they're going to target it, a couple of kilometers to the south, the target point for it. And I think, did you mention...
So if the seismometer quits, you know, hit the target.
Did you mention that one of the reasons I don't know whether you mentioned the auto optics will track is because it only makes the one burn and you get the update, which is different than what Mike was trying to follow them visually as they were burning. And the computer program has no way of keeping track of that, so the auto optics wouldn't follow, and when the sunlight got bad, he lost it. So in this way, it's possible that in the camera they may be able to pick it out all the way down.
Tom O'Toole.
Commander Conrad, we understand the surveyor is down the crater 100 feet down the slope. Could you describe how you plan, if you do get to it, how you'd plan to walk there and then walk back, up, down, and back up the side of the crater?
Well, we do have a traverse plan so that we won't disturb anything that they have in their photographs that they are interested in looking at in the photographs that we take. But this is really not till we get fairly close to it, and there's some rocks, there's some interesting rocks that have shown up all the way down, about 3 of them if I remember right, which are various distances from the surveyor, which we'd like to go by on the way down. Now, other than those 2 considerations, if you're talking about the slope and so forth, we have not been concerned with the slope. Matter of fact, Al and I talked to Dr. Shoemaker for about a half an hour yesterday specifically on that, because somebody's raised the question that they think that the slope may be too steep for us to go down. And I don't argue that with anybody, and so we have taken a 30-foot tether along, and we intend that if for any reason when we get to the top of the crater, if we're there and it looks like it might be difficult, we'll tether up and use one man as an anchor man and test it a little bit. But this tether is only 30 feet long. I don't expect to have to use it, neither does Al. I've walked up 20-degree slopes in the Pogo rig. This is no problem, the slope itself. The question is, will this fine material and in the light gravity, it won't necessarily have the bearing strength on the slope, and they feel that it may be very, very powdery and very difficult to walk in. Now there seems to be some controversy between the people that are study this sort of thing as to whether it will be or won't be. So we've taken the tether just for the worst case.
Any further questions? Jonathan Eberhard.
We heard yesterday that a potential landing area somewhat nearer the surveyor you've been referring to as the parking lot. Is there, what's the possibility that if everything's going right on the landing that you might decide to alter the landing point to this nearer landing area, which is right off the rim of the crater where surveyor is?
Well, that's a very good point. I guess we are not, the actual targeting is not to the surveyor. You're absolutely correct. The actual targeting is to a spot that's 1,000 feet short and 500 feet to the right, for 2 reasons. One of them, to give me the best visibility out the left window, to recognize the crater if we were right on the money. And the second thing is it's the largest area short of the target. We feel that it's easier to have to fly a little bit long than it is to shorten up the approach. And therefore we've deliberately targeted slightly this 1,000 feet short. And the other reason is that happens to be a 300-meter area that the experts tell us is one of the smoother areas around there. Now, they've given us a plot of all the areas around there that are no-no areas and all the areas that are good areas that they think we can park the thing. And I've been using the word park, I think, not parking lot, but some place to park it is, I guess, the term I've been using. And there's a 100-meter area, circular area, right next to the crater, which, if we're on the money and everything's real good and everything's under control and I'm not too spastic, I'd like to park it there. That's right. That's the term that I've been referring to. Because it would do two things. It's far enough away that we don't feel that the LEM exhaust plume would disturb any of the surveyor area, and it would give us the best chance to complete all the EVA, including the surveyor, without having to spend a lot of time walking somewhere.
Lee Holly? Hold one, please.
Are you going to observe the same length of quarantine?
Yes, as far as I know.
Tom O'Toole?
Commander, you must have talked to Neil very extensively about the geology on the moon. Do you plan to do anything drastically different than what he did, than what he and Buzz did, about the geology?
Well, not getting into details, I would say that we are going to do considerably more detailed geology than they did, and it was always planned that way. Our documented sample will be done in a much different manner than any of the rocks that they collected. And I think the easiest thing is you get the flight plan or the lunar surface ops book or any of these things that are around. I think you can see the great detail that we're going to collect these rock samples, to document them. Stereo photography of them before we pick them up, each one individually bagged so that they don't run into this dust problem, which they knew about anyhow. I mean, this is nothing different. I think it's an interesting point that when we started this flight, long before 11 landed, and we based all our EVA on 100% success of EVA operations on 11 with respect to how much work you can do. And this is probably one of the few times that we've changed absolutely nothing, to my knowledge, based on the EVA from before 11 landed. We haven't changed anything except extend the amount of time that we can stay and add the surveyor activities, because they're...
About those saddleback, that's one of the additions you mentioned.
Oh, well, I mean, we're doing more things. I'm basing that on the fact that we have, it looks like work is as easy as it looked like it was in the simulation. Al, why don't you mention the saddlebag business and talking with Neil, because that's a good point that came up.
Yeah, one of the things that Neil had mentioned was the fact that when he walked around initially on the lunar surface, he and Buzz would see rocks that they thought were interesting, but it wasn't that part of the time to collect rocks, and they didn't have their tongs or anything else to collect them. And so Pete came up with the idea that maybe what we ought to do is put some bags on our sides, keep the tongs with us at all times, and then when we're out deploying the ALSEP or when we're out doing any of the number of other things that we're doing in addition to doing the geology, if we run across any rocks that are unusual or anything from a geological standpoint that would be of interest, we can stop and collect it. So he's carrying the tongs on him at all times. We each carry a bag, and then we'll, as we do these other jobs on the first EVA, hopefully we'll, any points of interest or just lucky things we happen to run across, we'll be able to collect at the time. I think it was it's a good change.
And that's actually caused a change in the name of one of the sort of experiments. You've always been referring to this bulk sample. That's sort of going to be called the selected sample, because we expected on our walk out with the ALSAP and our initial work, as Al said, that we will find unusual rocks. And Neil said, gee, I saw this neat rock and I wish I'd have brought it back, but I couldn't remember where it was when it was time to get it. But we're going to try and prevent that, and our bulk sample really will be this collection of rocks, and they're going to call it a selected sample.
We're hunting that purple rock that Neil talked about.
Right.